Grace Frances, she has a company called Dramed in the United Kingdom where she teaches um, nursery school and grammar school children different subjects in an artistic fashion. She comes from a background of performance, and she's able to get what she's learned there and turn it into teaching and learning for children. It's absolutely wonderful. She had I don't a troubled youth, perhaps. Her parents suffered from mental illness. They were very loving, of course, but she had to kind of battle her way through that and learned a lot of lessons. And now um, she teaches children in this fashion. There's great content on her website. If you're interested in learning more about how she does it, she licenses it now. So if you're a performer anywhere and you want to be able to teach children in this fashion, you need to contact her. But it's a great conversation with Grace Frances on what she's done and how she's able to turn around what's happened to her and teach children in the arts, which is so important today, well underfunded in the U.S. and the U.K. But a great conversation with Grace Frances. I know you're going to like it. Thanks for listening. Hi, I'm Joey Pinz. People ask me, how did I lose 130 pounds? The quick answer is always discipline. I started my business, wasn't paying attention to my health, was eating too much, drinking too much sweets. My daughter was born. Next thing I know, I'm pre-diabetic, I have hypertension. I knew something had to change. Discipline. I, like many of you, have faced many challenges in your career, in your family, in your life, in your faith. How did you attack them? How did you approach them? How did you solve them, hopefully? It all had to have some degree of discipline. I'm also asked, how did you found and start a tech business that lasted over 25 years? Discipline. I was committed to it, enjoyed technology, didn't enjoy some aspects of it, but knew it was necessary. Discipline. Our podcast mission: how do we use discipline to better ourselves and society? Join me, please, as I talk to interesting people and discuss how they use discipline in their family and their passion and their careers and how it helped them. Our podcast vision: growth through learning from others. Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. It'll be light and serious. Join us, please. Thank you for consideration. Yes, Grace Frances, I really appreciate it. So, how important are arts to children, to child development?
More important than I think I have the language to
Mm,
express. I think performing arts for children isn't just about having, your children having access to performing arts to become a performing artist, an actor, a singer, or a dancer. I think performing arts is important because it builds confidence, and confidence is something that's necessary in life to have, just to be able to hold conversations and plant your feet in the ground and hold eye contact and express what you want to express and listen as well, to be a good listener. It's important because it nurtures the imagination, and I think the imagination is something that um, we are all realizing is key to success. Everything that we use in life starts with someone's imagination. So nurturing that is what the performing arts does as well. So yeah, um, I think it's necessary for a child.
yeah, one of Einstein's one of my favorite quotes of his was, "Imagination is more important than intelligence." And here in the States, the arts are really underfunded. It's an absolute shame. Is it this? Is it similar there in the UK?
Yes, it is.
I don't understand why the government, they don't see the need to. I mean, what you're doing is remarkable, Grace. I've watched your videos. I love. I don't know if I'm asking too much, but I don't know if Larry or Lily will make an appearance today. But I absolutely love what you're doing, and you come from such a kind of a, I'll say, traumatic, or you've had some trauma in your youth, but you seem to turn it around and don't want this happening to the youth now. It's remarkable.
Yeah, I mean, so, is it helpful to give a bit of background information?
Please.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll start with a bit about my cultural background and upbringing. I'm from the UK in London, and I grew up in a what we call a council estate. So like government funded housing. My mum was on government assistance, and I probably wouldn't say like I came from or experienced much trauma, but then perhaps, there's elements to that. So my parents suffered with, but they had their own mental health challenges, and they were two very extremely loving parents. Um, but yeah, they had their challenges, and that meant that I had challenges as a child.
Mm.
And one of the, you know, for example, it meant that, one day when I was, about 11, I really wanted a dog, and my parents wanted to provide for us, and my mum took us to the dog's home to rehouse a dog, and we got a dog from my mum. And then my dad got a dog off his friend because his friends could no longer look after the dog, so he brought the dog round, and then these two dogs had babies, and I ended up living at home with 14 dogs. And because my
Ooh.
mum suffered from depression and she struggled to keep the house running, that kind of meant that I was going to school smelling like dogs, and that led to, the bullying that comes with it. Um, and part of the way that I could express myself in school was the access that I did have to performing arts.
Hmm.
So it just was a really safe space for me. But because performing arts was so underfunded back then, as they are now, um, that access was limited. And my journey really began back then of how important the arts was to me as a child. Consequently, because of my childhood, I didn't leave school with, any exams, or I didn't get the grades that I needed to get. I didn't do the exams. I ended up becoming a mum at the age of 16. So the only thing that I did have was my love of performing arts.
Hmm.
And I went down the route of thinking that because I was good at performing arts, I should become an actor or something like that, which I did started to do quite well in. I started to break into TV and into theatre. But life kind of led me back to knowing how important performing arts was for me as a child and as a person, and I actually was making a good living out of it, and that brought me back to bringing that back to children and making sure children had that access. So what I do now is find ways to make sure performing arts is within the curriculum at schools, and I do that by linking it with the curriculum. So I teach maths through performing arts, I teach literacy through performing arts, I turn topics or I teach topics through performing arts in schools with other performers who teach.
Absolutely incredible. And so when you go to a you mentioned nursery and schools. I mean, don't they have a particular curriculum that they have to follow? And are you within those guidelines when you teach these particular subjects? How do you bridge that?
They do. So they have, in the UK, we have the EYFS, which stands for the Early Years Foundation Stage. And that's all the kind of, the government sets out all the targets that children should be meeting in certain areas, the 7 areas of learning. So I look at those, and before I developed my programs, there's 4 key programs that we take into early years settings. I've looked at those 7 areas of learning, looked at what the managers of the nurseries are trying to reach with their children, and then support that through my programs, through song, through dance, and through stories. Yeah, I create that to support those areas in nurseries and preschool settings, and then the same with schools. The schools follow the national curriculum, which we that's what we call it here in the UK.
Now, do you have explain the process a little bit more? Do you come into schools like periodically, once a month, once a quarter, something like that, and you go to different schools, or are you kind of main staying at one? How does that work? The actual schedule of everything.
So we specialise in early years because I believe that children should have access to the arts as early as possible,
Mm.
and I believe it should be high quality arts. And also, I just believe that we should be nurturing children's imaginations from really early, and I really believe in learning through play as
Mm.
well and nurturing that uniqueness of a child. So we specialise in early years. in our early years settings, we are often going into settings weekly on a weekly basis. So we have like a contract with a nursery, and then for schools, they are more one off. That this a teacher will get in touch and say, "Look, we've been working on this particular topic over the last term. Can you do something to support that?" And me with my network of performers will go off and devise something and go and bring that into a or turn that into a school workshop. And because I'd found out that this was a way that I could lend my skills in a good way to education while still having a flexible lifestyle career, while still doing the things in life that I want to do as well, but which means raising the children, or which is
Mm.
raising the children and still being a performer myself. I licensed out my model to other performers. So yeah, that's what. So we have licensees as well. Licensees go and teach our programs in their area.
Absolutely incredible. And do you ever what's the pushback that you get from institutions? Are they saying, "Well, we're okay. We're with the way we do it now. We don't really think your way. We can't fund your way." I mean, what's the is there any resistance?
There is resistance a lot when it comes to funding. So something that's really important to me is being able to make the arts more accessible to all children, regardless of background. Because I was one of those children who
Mm,
didn't have access to the arts, and I have found that actually it's the more affluent settings that tend to snap up our classes.
mm.
Um, so there is still, and I'm still trying to find the balance of making sure that the underfunded settings can access our programs as well. Sometimes that's through charity work, sometimes that's through working through other charities. So charity organisations will book our organisation, and there is a lot of funding out there at the moment, especially at the moment for arts and access and things for disadvantaged children. Um, and yeah, I'm still exploring that myself. One of the ways, well, we're kind of building a charity because we think that might be a way as well to make sure we can access other areas, but that's not nothing that's not set yet or established yet.
I have 2 daughters, and when they were younger, we found a program, Music for Now, I forget what it was called, but it was at a church. It was just that they just
Mhm.
kinda rented out the music room of a church, and we would go, I think, once a week, and, we would kinda sing and dance and go through each song, but, I mean, that was after school, you paid for it separately, it was, a community of entertainers that did it, but that you're actually going into the schools and bringing this into their classroom. That's remarkable.
Yeah, thank you.
That's absolutely remarkable, and I've seen your videos where I mentioned Larry and Lily before. You have these puppets, and you could see the smile on the children when you're creating this agenda, and you're creating the class for whatever topic it may be. Um, do you do you have to cover certain topics in order to meet to I kind of asked this before, but how much reign do you have when you're trying to deliver a particular topic? Like,
Well, I create basically I've created my own curriculum. So
wow.
Med have created their own curriculum, which we take in and present. Like, look, we've created our own curriculum, and this is how it can support what you're doing in your setting.
Hmm.
And of I mean, yeah, that's it. I mean, I guess the plan is to say that Mode have presented their own curriculum. We have our own curriculum going on, which accompanies learning that's taking place in schools and nurseries, and I'm trusted with that because I've
Hmm.
done my research, because I am experienced, because I mean, a lot of the time when I first started, it was a manager of a nursery saying, "Look, we need help with this area of learning. Can you do something with it and with your performing arts skills?" And I went off and I created something, and I went back and I say, "This is what I have," and they were like, amazing. This particularly with our program, our Lily and Larry Love Literacy program. They loved it.
Hmm.
And then eventually, a few years later, they asked me if I could do something with maths, and I went away and I did something and brought it back, and it wasn't quite right. It didn't quite fit. It wasn't quite what they're looking for. But we had that communication. They gave me the feedback. I went away, refined it, brought it back, and it's just kind of evolved from having these conversations with practitioners in early learning environments. So yeah, that's where I'm at now. Now I trust myself enough to go off and create something that fits quite well.
That's interesting. So do you actually have to present to the teachers or to the management first before you're able to present this lesson to the children?
No, not anymore. Um, I guess the lady who I worked with when I first started out back in probably 2013, she was more like a mentor to me.
Hmm.
So, and she was actually the place where I first got my contract and realized that this was actually a viable business. Yeah, it was a. I developed these programs a lot with her feedback. Now it's testimonials. So schools and nurseries will get in touch based on what they've heard from someone else, and I'll just go in and deliver it. And also now I have a set program. So what I'll do last year or what I did last year is often what I will bring back this year with a different age group. So it's kind of like I guess my curriculum for different age groups lasts for the length of a school year,
I see.
an academic year.
But for a woman who um, you used some acronyms there that I'm not quite familiar with. You didn't. I don't think you finished high school. Is what you're saying? You didn't get your diploma, your high school diploma, and you have such a bit, not just in the arts, but you have such a business acumen. I watched your video of how you goal set and you how you uh, where did you derive these for these skills? I mean, it's very impressive.
Thank you. My parents, this is why I don't know, I'm really passionate about us kind of creating better support for those who struggle with their mental health,
Mm.
because I feel like I am blessed with two very talented parents who had their challenges that weren't very well supported. They didn't have access to the support that they needed, but I could see that they were two extremely talented individuals with so much to give to the world. And I felt growing up with them struggling with alcohol or depression, that it was going to waste, that their talent was going to waste. And my dad, for example, built at one point in his life had a business where he made the most amazing railings. He was a blacksmith. He could just turn metal or iron into a beautiful fireplace or a beautiful staircase or beautiful railings that he was really proud of. But he did not have the support that he needed to go where he could have gone with that. And same with my mum. And I think for me, I could kind of see that I didn't want to be like that. I didn't want to have all these amazing gifts inside me and not present them to the world. Because I think
Mm.
if you're a talented person, and I think all of us are, all of us have wonderful talents and gifts inside us, it's our duty to share those with the world because they make the world a better place. So I think I always had that awareness, or I always believed that from a very young age, and just committed to that. I didn't have any kind of business clue. I was very poor with money, probably because that was um I didn't learn how to manage money. So yeah, I've had to kind of figure that out as I go along, but I think it's my commitment to knowing that I'm good at something, and it's my duty to put that out there.
Wow. And the fundamentally, this is it's a mental health issue. With your parents. Here in the states, we have a serious problem with it. It gets talked about, but there's very little funding. I get to talk to people who've had issue with mental illness themselves or with others, and I wonder just how different is it there in UK? Of course, you've been mentioning your parents. You say it's better now. How is it better now?
What do you mean better now?
Mental health treatment.
Yeah.
Is it getting better? I mean, what is there more access now than there was for your parents?
I think definitely people are talking about it more.
Mm,
And with social media, it's becoming less of a taboo to talk about. Whereas once upon a time, I was really ashamed, really, of,
mm,
you know, the fact that my dad was a drinker and my mum struggled the way that she did. I didn't really speak to anyone about it. I was very embarrassed, and neither did they. They didn't really it was all kind of brushed under the rug. But now I feel like these conversations are happening more, and I think that is one of the good things about social media, and just also people wanting to be more truthful and transparent, because that's life and not everything is rosy. And actually, a lot of the time, it's the challenges that help us grow and be comfortable in who we are and discover our strengths. So there's that. And I just wanted to pedal back quickly, because on your question of how did I kind of go from not having leaving school with like the education that I needed,
yeah.
or the exams or the qualifications that I needed. Um, I just wanted to share, and this is something that I do share, that my mum, in trying to find and heal herself when she was young, would read a lot of Louise Hay books, who's an author, very popular author from the United States. She would have like a book called Heal Your Life, or You Can Heal Your Life, written by Louise Hay. And my mum would watch a lot of Oprah Winfrey as well. And I remember her taking affirmations or things that stood out from her from these books and from these TV shows, and she would just write them down in pen and stick them to the wall. So
Hmm.
from a really young age, I lived in a house where my mum didn't even want to open the curtains. The curtains were closed all day. She often stayed, asleep all day. But stuck all around was these affirmations, just sellotaped all over the place.
Wow.
And I think that was really good programming for me. I knew that things were tough when I was a child, but I could always see these affirmations of how I could control the outcome and I had the power within me. So I think that was quite key in how my mindset was primed as a child.
How wonderful that is. I just talked to a young man who battles with mental illness and depression and bipolar, and you know, every day he contemplates suicide, and his podcast is Coffee Over Suicide. So instead of suicide, he drinks a cup of coffee. So um, mental illness is there, and it's so pervasive in our community, and just to uh, to address it the way we are and talk about it openly, I hope will open the eyes of many and get more funding and get more visibility. You said you went when you were younger, you went into the arts yourself. You went into performing. You were doing quite well. Tell me how, the love of performing entered your life. Did you see others doing it? Your parents? Why did you enter into it?
Um, I remember being 7 years old or about that age and looking in the mirror, taking on a different persona. I used to just
Hmm.
pretend to be someone else quite a lot. And I don't know whether that was escapism, but that's what I would do. And then I think around that age, I'd learnt what a psychologist was. And it was someone who studied other people and helped other people. And I remember looking in the mirror and thinking, when I grow up, I either want to be an actor or a psychologist. And that was because of my interest in other people and just expression, and just I'd pay a lot of attention to that. And because of that, I became quite good at it. I think I used to get complimented quite a lot as a child for my performance skills. And then one day in high school, my mum felt like the school was a bit too rough for me. I'd got into a sticky situation in school, and my mum pulled me out, and she knew how much I loved performing, and so she sent me to this theatre school. It was a very well-known theatre school in my area, but it wasn't a state school. It had a fee, so she had to pay a fee, which she knew she didn't have the funds for. But she sent me there because she hoped that founder of the school would offer me a scholarship.
Wow.
And although I got lovely compliments from the founder of the school, 4 weeks in, I got called into the office. I was in year 7, so I was 11 years old at the time. And she was like, "Where's the fees? Your mum's not paying the fees. I've not got the first fees from your mum. You're not in the right uniform," because my mum couldn't even afford the uniform. She'd kind of got me this red skirt from the charity shop, and it was nothing, nowhere near the skirt that, was a part of their uniform. So yeah, she kind of shouted at me and sent me home at mid-morning. And that, again, I think that kind of shaped my,
Wow.
goodness me, like I was good at something, and the only way that I could do it was by having all these fees to nurture that. So I think there was a bit of rebellion there. I feel like those little experiences there made me kind of think, well, I'm going to do this, whether
Hmm.
you give me the opportunity or the chance to, I will do it. Um, and so, yeah, so I think that was more, so there wasn't so much of me kind of looking up to actors per se, although, yeah, I would enjoy, a movie now and again, but it was more, I was aware that it was something that I was good at and just wanted to do it. Um, and then I progressed. Obviously, I didn't leave school with any GCSEs, and because I didn't have any GCSEs, probably the only thing that I could do was performing arts at college. And so after I had my baby, I went back to college just because I didn't want to. I didn't want to make him live the same life that I'd lived. I
Mm.
wanted to do better for him. Um, and so I did performing arts at college and did quite well at performing arts there. And then from there, went to university and did performing arts at university. And then as I was finishing university, I went to a famous, it's a now famous drama school, where I worked alongside John Boyega, who is now very famous in the
Sure.
US, and Letitia Wright, who's another actress that's doing very well in the US as well. And I think actually probably working alongside them and other amazing talented actors kind of made me realize, oh, it is possible. Yeah, and I'm still doing it. I think that explains why I'm still doing it, why I'm
Right.
still, or why I've recently returned to acting.
And you talk about having a job in a call center during your acting and how it was, what is, you used a term there that I enjoyed, I can't think of, but kind of soul sucking, I think you said?
Soul destroying, I call it.
Yes.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. And you didn't enjoy it.
No. So while I was on stage, I had a performing job in a very well-known theatre in London called the National Theatre. And I had like this 6-month gig there. And while I was performing there, I got a job in the call centre. Obviously having a young family at the time. I had 2 children by this point. This was like back in 2014. And this was like probably my first office job, I would say. And it was, oh, it just drained me. I was so miserable. I couldn't bear the thought of getting up in the morning to go and do that job. Oh yeah, cold calling people. It was just awful. And I thought, gosh, I have to, even if I don't become, or if I don't go anywhere else with this performing, I have to find a way to lend my performing arts skills to another industry where they're going to be appreciated and I'm going to be doing something more meaningful. And around about the same time, I'd came across some statistics that said in the UK there are 39,000 performers on average, and only 10% were employed at any one time.
Hmm.
And some people would go so far, some statistics were going so far as to say only 2% were employed at any one time, and that this was a major cause of career anxiety and depression amongst performers. And that was something that I could really relate to.
Mhm.
And so I was like, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to find something and the kind of opportunity. It was my son's nursery, actually. He was my first contract.
Ah.
So yeah, that's how I kind of fell into that. And then with the franchising, or I don't quite franchise, I license out my programs. Um, that was because I felt like there's other performers like me out here. There's other mums with a performing arts background who want to have flexibility in their lives and spend more time raising their children, and just having that flexibility. Or there's other performers who still want to earn a decent living on the side, giving back, lending their skills in a way that It's just like practicing. If you're a performer and you're teaching at the same time, you have your performing career, but your teaching in the schools and nurseries is just like you're, yeah, refining your audition techniques
Hmm.
or still strengthening your voice in some way or performing skills in some way.
So with 90 to 95% unemployment with performers, has it gotten better? Has the pandemic, we're hopefully coming out of it, but is there still that much? I don't know much about this area. Is it still that tough to get jobs?
So most recently, when I checked up on the statistics, there's now about 52,000 performers in the UK on average, and obviously the pandemic made it worse. Like it
Yeah.
was very, I'm not, I don't have the numbers on the top of my head, but pretty much during the pandemic, it was just dire, the performing arts industry. And I know things are picking up now, but it's not going to be any better than what it was 5 years ago. I'm pretty sure about that.
So let's talk about the first kind of excuse me, Grace. The first entrepreneurial kind of spark. So you mentioned that your son's nursery, you first performed there. Was it completely your idea? Did you bring them in and say they could learn better, or did somebody come to you? How did that happen?
So when I remember picking my son up from nursery and watching story time happen at the
Hmm.
end of the day. And the story wasn't how I would tell a story to a group of children. Um, Now, I think I should start by saying the staff who worked in the nursery clearly tried their best, and they were
Mhm.
amazing, loving, caring teachers. A lot of them, English was their second language, who worked in this particular nursery. So when it came to story time, they were sitting there with a book, turning the book, but playing a CD player. So playing the CD player and just turning the book. And I think that's probably, I think I've actually brought this up to another nursery, and another nursery said, oh, yeah, sometimes we do just use an audio CD, and they were turning the book. But sometimes I think that, especially, I don't know, the educator in me thinks it's very important to be able to role play or demonstrate how we read and play
Hmm.
around with that and use your finger to follow the words in the sentence. That's a part of a child's learning themselves, watching you do that. And so I was like, oh, is this what happens all the time when you're reading to children? And that's not necessarily the case. I'm not saying that it was, but I volunteered to come and do a storytelling session as a performer,
Hmm.
at the nursery at the time, and I think that session surprised them. They didn't expect that. They didn't expect the way that I could bring a story to life and use drama games and music and vocal exercises with such a group of young children, and it worked really well. So I did this little session that I'd volunteered as a parent, as lots of parents do, and I went away and I got a call saying, can we pay you to do that and
Hmm.
something like that. So that's how it began there. But when it comes to entrepreneurial experiences, I think that I'd had, certain experiences when I was a child that kind of made me interested in business. I remember one of them, I'd found like broken pieces of glass again when I was about 7 years old in the estate where I was living, when they were really colourful, and I'd picked them all up and I'd collected them, and I'd was trying to sell them to passerbys, like adults who grown ups who were walking by in the alleyway, and I made money. They
Hmm.
stopped and they paid. And looking back, I think they obviously, it was cute. It was a child trying to sell something, but I was getting a pound for these little, selling them as like magical crystals or whatever. And that was my first experience, which I'm so grateful for. I'm so grateful that, grown-ups can and adults can look kindly on a child who's trying something, because that shaped me. It was self-worth. It built my self-confidence,
No,
and I
that
still
is
remember it now.
wonderful. And I hope listeners of this will watch some of your videos. But you talked about kind of you're performing when you're telling the story there in front of the children, and it's wonderful. And you see these young children with smiles and the kind of eyes wide open, and this is incredible the way that they're learning that way, and they're enjoying it. The teachers are enjoying it. How rewarding it must be for you to work with children in this manner.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I was just saying to someone earlier on that, life can be up and down. That's a normal part of life. But whenever I go and do my job, there's one rule. I can never ever I can never not be in a good space. So I have to consciously make sure that I am in the best possible space when I
Hmm.
enter a classroom full of children. I owe it to them. I have to be as positive and just have positive energy. But I've never left a space feeling down or feeling
Hmm.
worse. It's therapy for me. I go in and I'm just have to tap into that joy for them, and then we have such a joyful learning experience together, and then I will leave just feeling so full and happy. And yeah, it's just just amazing work. It's brilliant working with children, and I'm sure anyone who works with children, particularly young children, would agree.
Yeah, I have such a as I get older, I have such a more soft spot for children like that, and I just, oh my goodness, I tear up. I'm just a mess, Grace. But uh, so when you're performing and teaching slash performing, how much of what you do of that performance of that teaching is art versus science in your methodology in your delivery?
How much of what I do is art versus science? That's a really good question. Um, mm,
Is it
but
completely improvisational?
no,
Of
I'd
course not.
actually say there was more planning that does go
Right.
into it. Like every lesson is planned from beginning to end, and there is a structure. So, and then it's research. I know what works. So I've learnt that. Consistency is really important at that age. Like the children need to become, it's helpful for them to be familiar with what they're getting, because they need routine at that age. So the classes are structured with to be consistent. So you've got your beginning, which is the same. It's a welcome song, which I've written and got music produced for. That music is the same as the welcome end, and then it follows a structure. Sorry, the end song. So there's a beginning, welcome song, and there's the end song, and in between there's a structure of your warm up, your vocal exercises, a learning activity, a performance activity, and then like a cool down. And within the beginning and the end and the structure that follows the same routine, that's when I am free to use my artistic license. So there'll be the songs to support the particular subject that we're doing. For example, if we're singing about shapes, there'll be a song that supports the learning of shapes. There'll be a story and a drama, a learning activity, and a performance activity that supports learning and exploring shapes in class. But I will have the artistic license to bring that to life and use a big imagination and use suspension and g- dance to my soul's content with the children.
Hmm. We had we had something growing up here in the States, a cartoon called Schoolhouse Rock. I'm not sure if you're familiar with these cartoons where there were songs and they kind of taught us, the different subjects or anything. Have you ever heard of Schoolhouse Rock?
I have heard of it, yeah.
I just it just kind of came to me now as you were describing, teaching that. So you would say perhaps that the plan development is more scientific than the actual delivery is a bit more artistry.
Yes, definitely.
Very interesting. And um, you mentioned some of the subjects. Are you
Mhm.
ever teaching? Please go over that. It was math. It was many different subjects that you're asked to teach about as well.
Yeah, so I have a program called Number Fun for maths, and we go in and we teach like the different topics within maths. So one week it could be 3D shapes. One week it can be 2D shapes, it might be time, it might be just counting up the number line, it might be counting down the number line, it might be counting in pairs, it might be weight and mass. All of that is taught and explored in our sessions. And our song starts with, within my welcome song there is like lyrics that say maths is all around us. So I'd sing um maths is all around us, it is everywhere. Maths is all around us, in everything we do. And the children will sing that in the beginning. That's a song that is sang at the beginning of every session. So we're reinforcing the idea that maths is everywhere. We don't just sit down. You're not just, when you get to the point, and this is my intention, I don't just want them to get to school and think maths is a boring subject, we sit down and we learn maths. I want them to know that maths is in everything that we're doing. Build the confidence in their maths, celebrate it, enjoy it. And I hope that they pick that up and that lasts with them through their whole lives.
Fascinating. It's interesting that in the United Kingdom, you say the subject maths, plural. For some reason, here in the US, we just say math, singular. I
Mm.
and I just learned about this recently before I talked to you. And the term is mathematics, plural, and
Mm.
math is the abbreviation. So it would seem that your way is better. But for those, or I should say better, makes more sense. But so anybody listening here in the US, math, for some reason we say singular and you say plural there. I'm not quite sure why that happened.
That's so interesting. That really did throw me, actually, because I found that out when I was kind of obviously writing my copy on my website. So, by copy, for anyone who doesn't know, it's just writing the content for your
Right.
website that sells your service and just explains what you do. And yeah, I was like, am I writing maths or math? And a lot of the stuff that you will Google, your research when you're in the UK comes from the United States. A lot of us log on Google. It's a US company, I believe.
Yes.
So yeah, I did figure that out. But actually, I think they both make sense. So if you're using the abbreviation is math, right? Or if
Of
you're cutting the word
mathematics.
in, yeah, if you're using the abbreviation of mathematics, or if you're cutting the word short, you will get math. Or if
Right.
you're using the first part of it, but then yeah, I get it. I get what you're saying, but I think I can see both. I can see both ways.
Certainly, certainly. I don't which way is right is irrelevant. It's just acknowledging it.
Yeah.
But since the young, I've never heard it here in the US called maths. We talk a lot on the podcast about discipline. So I lost a lot of weight. People ask me, how do I lost it? And I just say, well, it's just discipline. I just focused and,
Mm.
you know, um, kind of had a come to Jesus moment. I was very, really overweight. And the doctor says, hey, if you're not going to see your daughter, I had a child just like you, and I kind of turned it around. How much of what you do do you consider yourself disciplined?
I really love this topic of conversation. How much is discipline involved in what I do? It's so hard it's so hard to know, because unless you've got someone else to compare it to. So
Mm.
to someone else that I would look at, and who I would consider really disciplined, like, the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world, who apparently, has the same outfit basically every day to limit the choice, because they don't want energy wasted on that choice. I consider that being really disciplined. But
Hmm.
then I do know, and I have heard other people refer to me as being really disciplined. Um, and when I, got the invitation to join your podcast or come onto your podcast, and I thought about this question, I thought, gosh, am I disciplined? But then I realized that there were many parts of my character that was very disciplined, to, even have the child at the age that I did, and still decide to go back to college, and get up every morning and just make sure that I could establish a routine that worked, so I could
Mm.
function as a young mum going to college. Discipline was very important then. And obviously, even now, it's very important for me to have a structure to my days. For example, a Monday is the day where I'll do podcasting. I'm creating my own podcast on a Monday, and I know that Monday is podcast day. Monday is that day for me. That if I try to just let anyone book it any day in the week, it wouldn't work out because I have other things that I need to do. I need to teach, I need to run my business. So yeah, the structure of how my week is set out. Podcasting is for Monday. I know that Tuesday I have this. I know that Wednesday is for this, Thursday's for this, Friday's for this. Saturday and Sunday are more for the children. It's more family orientated. That becomes a priority over anything else
Wonderful.
on the weekend. And then I guess evolving in business, I knew that in order for me to learn what I needed to learn, I had to read because there was no other way really that I was going to digest the information that I needed to digest. And so
Hmm.
it was that commitment to books. Um, from the age of 19, I've been an avid reader, just learning from other people who do things that I'm inspired by. So yeah, I would say that is quite disciplined to some, probably not to others. It's hard to measure, isn't it?
It is. It is. It's a spectrum, perhaps. It seems to me. I, I'll make a sweeping generalization that uh, people who are artists often are not business savvy or not entrepreneurial. It's just a sweeping generalization. There's sure, but you seem to be strong in both. You're an artist. You're a mother. You're disciplined on Mondays. You have everything kind of charted that way, and you've created this business. You've licensed it. You've taken all these other steps. Shows incredible discipline and incredible flexibility. You need to be applauded for that.
Thank you. And I think, and that actually, I think that being an artist and not being disciplined or not being business savvy is a myth. And it's
Mm,
actually one that I think I'm actively working to bust because
good.
I remember when I was becoming an artist and was very started to get very sure of my love for creativity and that was the route that I wanted to take. Hearing phrases like, well, if you're a left brainer, you're not going to be good at managing
Mm,
money, and there's all these things that you're going to struggle with because artists just aren't good at business, and also the myth of being a starving artist. Well, if you're an art, prepare to starve. And I think that they are damaging actually when it's conditioning. It's not helpful conditioning. So I'm
mm,
very much about, yes, I'm an artist, yes, I'm creative, yes, that's my strengths, but I can also learn how to do better in business and build a business and become better at my finances. There might not be naturally things that I'm good at, and I don't have to be.
right.
Part of developing and becoming better in business is knowing how to delegate and just knowing that someone else can do that for you, and you can still have a great business at the end of it. And you absolutely shouldn't be starving either.
No matter what you do, yeah, you should not be
Right.
starving. Yes, yeah. One of the fundamental pillars of business growth is delegation. Certainly, the entrepreneur that says like has to order the food. It does everything. There's not going to be a lot of. It's not scalable. It's not a lot of growth there. Do you plan on extending your franchise outside of the United Kingdom? I'm sorry, your licensing outside of the United Kingdom.
Yeah, I mean, it's very the way that I fell into licensing, I feel is very I would say, and I know that there might be some skeptical listeners out there, but I feel very divinely led with the work that I do.
Oh,
I'm not necessarily a religious person. I was born into a Christian family, went to church occasionally. I would consider myself more spiritual now, but just the way that I have got to where I am, I don't think it's just me. Like the way that the ideas land and the way that the right people just turn up at the right time. I kind of feel like I'm doing this dance with the universe. It's a co-creation. And so these are one of the things that keep me going. And when I discovered that actually the licensing model was a model that I wanted to go down, was a route that I wanted to go down, which I never would have done unless I followed something else prior to that. So the story is,
hmm.
originally I was just teaching in nurseries, and I always felt I can't just be doing this. I don't want to be running around until I'm 65 teaching in nurseries. As much as I love working with children, I don't want to be running around doing that. There has to be something bigger at play here. And I came across this fitness program, a bit like Zumba, but not quite Zumba, more to the music that I like. I like Afro beats, I like soca, I like hip hop, I like R&B. I came across this fitness program that really excited me. Every single time the first place I saw it was someone doing it in a local park, and I watched it and it gave me goosebumps and it made my hair stand up and gave me these butterflies in my tummy, and I couldn't work out why I got so excited about
Hmm.
the idea of being a teacher of this fitness brand, because I'm not into fitness like that really. Yes, I like dance, but it wasn't my field. But every single time I came across it, I got really, really excited about it. And I'm a believer that when something does that to you, when something excites you like that, you have to follow it, because your body's talking to you. You might not know, it might not make
Hmm.
sense, but you have to explore that and see where it takes you. It might take you to the next day and then fizzle out, or it might not, it might keep going. So for me, it kept on going. I ended up investing in this fitness program to become a teacher in, and I taught this thing for 2 years. And then one day I was laying down getting my eyelashes done on the little chaise long that your eyelash lady or beautician has you on when she does the eyelashes. And I just had this realization, like, it was like a download, that what I was meant to learn from that fitness brand was the licensing model, because that's what I'd
Mm.
done. I'd bought a license. I was getting the lesson plans every month, and I knew this licensing model quite well just by being a teacher of this brand. And I was like, that's it. That's what I have to do with Dramed. And I got goosebumps. My hair stood up.
Hmm.
Tears rolled down my eyes, because I was like, I got it. I got the message. And
With
then
the
I was
timing,
done
that
with.
was
Yeah, that was done. I was done with the fitness brand after that. I closed my classes, and then that's where I went with Dramed. So yeah, it's always, and then from there I've always kind of had this vision of wanting to be in 25 countries within the next 5 years.
wow.
Um and until someone said to me, "Can you name those countries?" And I was like, "No, I can't." So I changed it to 500 licensees over the next 5 years. But yeah, those are my goals.
Fantastic. And if somebody here in the States or whoever's listening wanted to become part of your network, become part of your licensing, how could they do that?
Oh, well, I would love to help a performer in the States or anywhere else build a flexible lifestyle career that works for them, where they're lending their performing skills to revolutionize children's education and still
Mhm.
have the time to do whatever else it is they want to do. Head to my website. It's www.dramed.com. You can download a prospectus, or you can book a call with me. And that's usually the first step in the process. We'll have like a telephone conversation. We'll make sure that the brand fits with your goals and your skills, and that you fit with the brand. And then we would go from there. You'd purchase a license to teach some of our programs, or one of our programs, or however many you'd want to teach. And then we would, yeah, send you a training manual, so teach you how to run your business. The back end with that, you kind of get the support. So if you was teaching a Dramed business, it's like a business in the box. You
Mm.
have the everything that you need to know is with you, as well as the lesson plans, as well as the marketing material that you would use. You would have all of that.
Great. And so inspirational. It's amazing to this epiphany that you had there in your petitions, all business, to where you are now, to where you were from, what you're doing now, and you're helping our youth. I don't know of a greater purpose. I mean, you're helping our youth, are everything. I mean, they're our future. They're our next generation. They're going to run everything. And to introduce this way of learning in such an adaptive way is so inspirational. I want to thank you for your time today, Grace Francis. I really appreciate it. You mentioned your website. I'll put it in the show notes. Your YouTube is really great too. It's got a lot of great content on it. You've got Instagram as well, Twitter. I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Joey, for having me. It's been such a lovely conversation. And yeah, it's a real pleasure to meet you and have a conversation. And I look forward to connecting online some more.
Absolutely. And maybe one day, if you're in the States or I'm in London, we'll get together, have a cup of coffee, and continue our conversation.
Oh, let's do that. That sounds great.
You be well. So great talking with you. Hope to talk to you soon.
Yeah, lovely. Take care.
Bye now.
Bye.
Cheers. Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you'll find lots of resources and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Would you like to financially support the podcast? You can go to our Patreon site. Consider $5, $10, or $20 a month. There's all kind of plans that we have there. There's like a one-time payment. What is this podcast episode worth to you? $25, $50, $100, $500, $1,000, $5,000. You be the judge. You can go to our PayPal account to do that as well. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations.